Wait, did
Um,
we start already?
well, I mean, I hit record, but I'm not necessarily going to put,
Sure.
unless this part is really compelling, I won't
I,
include
I feel like it kind of is.
it. How are you?
Well, thank you.
Good. So you're in a hotel?
I might actually, it's quite possible I could be in the very same hotel room that you might be in 2 days.
Really?
Yeah, I'm at the Westin in Indianapolis.
It's so possible. Other than, I mean, maybe they have like 700 rooms, but you're probably
Yeah.
in a very similar room that um so are you guys actually playing in Indy, or are you taking a little hiatus for
Yeah,
doing it?
no, we're playing tonight
Okay.
in Indianapolis. So
Great.
I will see, since PASIC starts tomorrow,
Right.
I will see several of the PAS folks tonight, and my former professor, Jim Campbell,
Oh yeah, yeah.
Anders Ostrand, John
Nice.
Meehan. I think they're all coming out to the show, so that'll be fun.
That's amazing.
Yeah,
Well, that worked out well.
pressure's on.
I know, right? And then where do you head to next? Somewhere.
Louisville, I want to
Okay.
say.
Yeah.
No, we have maybe 8 more shows
Okay.
this leg, and then that's the third leg, and we have a few weeks off then, because I've only had about under 2 weeks off since September 1st.
Okay. Wow.
So it's been, yeah. But that follows a period where I had 18 months off,
Right. That's right. So that's not so bad.
which I got to practice. So I can actually talk
Yeah,
about practicing maybe.
that's right. Yeah. That's great. Well, cool. Um, well, thank you, first of all, Glenn, for doing this. And I promise that I will be sensitive with your time. So I know you're a busy guy, but yeah, I thought, in reaching out to a bunch of different people about this topic and talking about what it means to practice or repair and prepare and anything that goes along with that. Trying to tap in as many different people and types of people and people who are embodying as many different types of careers as possible.
Mhm.
I just thought would be really, well, one, fascinating, but two, hopefully beneficial as well. I kind of go into this with the mindset of, not that it's all for younger listeners or viewers, but in a way, like, what is the student perception of what it looks like on the other side of school once you're actually working and gigging and doing all of that, and what is the reality of that life in terms of, do you get to still practice? Do you get to still get better at your craft and
Yeah.
all of that? So anyway, and you obviously inhabit a very, I think, unique space within all of this, because you do so many different things. So since you are currently on tour with Wilco, I thought I would start with that, because and this is just personal curiosity, like,
Mhm.
what does that look like in terms of your practice or lack of practice when you're actually out on tour?
Yeah. So, well, there's a lot of ways to kind of answer that. When you're just thinking in terms of like traditional practice, there is time, because, I'm on stage 2.5 hours plus a half-hour sound check a day. The rest of the time is downtime.
Right.
I'm fortunate enough where Ashwin, my trusted tech, sets up all my gear, makes it sound good, so I don't have to deal with any of that. Um, so there is an opportunity to, and we also typically have a dressing room set up. So we'll meet typically, yeah, I don't know, an hour or an hour and a half before the show and just jam.
Right.
I have like a small 2-piece kit with a cymbal and hi-hats, and everyone's got some small amps, and we just go and play through some tunes that we haven't played in a long time that we may not even play on this tour, or covers or whatever. Just kind of get, I don't know, get in the zone for anywhere from 10 to 25, 30 minutes.
Right. Right.
So I do have an opportunity, because that kit is usually set up by 3 o'clock, to go and practice on that kit. However, I typically don't.
Yeah.
Um, I'm playing so much when I'm on tour. that I honestly try and give my arms and legs a rest when I'm not, because I get really paranoid. You know, how many people at our age, at this stage in their career, have some sort of physical ailment or issue over time that they've had, and especially with my background in drum and bugle corps and marching band. You know, a lot of repetitive motions.
Right.
I'm very fortunate in Wilco that I don't do a lot of repetitive motions. I'm able to play on every single show we do. I play traditional, I play match grip, I play with brushes every single show, I play with mallets, I use Stevens grip, I use Burton grip every single show. So I'm using a lot of different techniques, grips, a lot of different motion, you know, from French grip to German grip, swinging technique, Moeller technique to more proper Gladstone. So it's like, it's varied. So I'm lucky to avoid any injuries that way.
Right.
But I also try and not overdo it. So long answer is I try not to practice on tour other than before the show. At least 30 minutes I'm on a pad, warming up. Okay. I'm not one of those guys who can just sit down and blaze. I have to warm up. I stretch out. So I guess part of my, I guess that's a little different than practicing, but not really, because I do revisit a lot of exercises from back in the Cavalier days, or you know, my high school marching band, and just explore new things. You know, I always play clapping music as a duo, right hand, left hand duo. Okay. You know, match grip, traditional, and that's the thing. I do everything. I try and do everything right hand lead, left hand lead, both traditional and match grip. And if I do that for 30 minutes and play through all these exercises and warm up that way, it is a form of maintenance. So it's maintenance practicing, keeping my muscles in check. And you know, in the mornings, I always stretch out my whole body and definitely stretch out my arms and shoulders and legs before a show. So that's kind of my road practice. Now, there have been exceptions. There's been times when I had a show with Kronos at Zankel Hall once in the middle of a tour. And so I had a practice kit. I mean, I had my solo kit, that kit I was using for that show, on the bus in the bay. And anytime that we weren't on stage at a hotel or a day off, I had that set up in the bus, because, you know, the bus can expand out. So I had it set up in the bus, and I would just practice and prepare for that. I also remember working up Illimak, the piece I commissioned from John Luther Adams, and having a lot of, you know, just on bed, having the music spread out on a bed in a hotel room, and starting to work on a lot of the rhythms. And, you know, there's definitely ways to do it on the road. But like I said, generally I try and give my arms a rest and not overdo it, since I'm playing so much every night, and I'm not super young anymore. So.
Well, yeah, you mentioned injury, and I've been nursing a 3-month wrist injury, because I'm also not so young.
From playing, or
it was actually from schlepping, which is like, you know, it's one of those things that you don't think about. You know, I think we probably all, on some level, have this mentality of, you know, I still some part of me still feels at least 5 to 10 years younger than my actual age. And so you of course do things without maybe much preparation or thought, because you know, in my mind, I'm still 32. And that's not the case. So when you lift something that's very heavy, and you know, you're just trying to get something out of the trunk of your car. It's amazing, like, how debilitating that can, like, you know, how serious that could potentially be. So yes, the self-care aspect resonates with me.
I know what you're saying. The morning I left for this leg of the tour, I was moving a small dresser to the basement by myself. And the last couple steps slid, major gash on my calf. It's still there. It's horrible. Luckily, it doesn't affect my playing at all. It's in the perfect spot where it didn't affect that. But I did think, like, oh, you know what, I need to be a little more careful, because it could have been something worse. And I am a little proactive about it when I move my own gear for solo shows or anything like that. I preemptively put on wrist braces. You know, just that you buy at the drugstore or whatever. Just to make sure I have that extra support when I'm carrying, and always, you know, keep your back straight, don't bend over.
Right. Yeah.
I try and be a little, you know, mindful of all that.
Yeah. So if I jump back into just briefly what you mentioned about kind of your typical tour routine and you know, the practice coming in the form of warm up or maintenance. So if you don't have, you know, sort of an outside special project that you're concurrently preparing for while you're on tour, that routine did that develop over many years? When you first started touring with Wilco, was that something that you were very mindful of? Okay, this is how I'm going to sort of address this issue. This is how I feel like I need to warm up every day. This is how the band gets together to, you know, kind of get the vibe going or whatever. Or is that something that has evolved over time?
Well, the dressing room setup, that's evolved over time. We didn't have that at first, you know.
Yeah.
Now that we have, you know, a truck instead of a trailer and 2 buses and all, there's more room for more gear.
Right.
So that developed. I've had the same little strap-on knee pad since I started
Right.
with Wilco, and before that even. So that I've always kept it with me. And, you know, I use the ProMark rubber tipped marching warm-up sticks. They're heavy, they're big. So they really get me going. And then when I get back on stage with my sticks, it's nice.
Right.
So I guess I've always done the warm-up thing. As far as practicing, you know, when the kit was there, maybe I would practice a little more depending on what I was into at the time. But I think I've also realized that, you know, at first it's really valuable for me. My thing is I walk every day,
Okay.
typically on tour between, you know, whatever, between 3 and 10 miles every day. That's important for me, just to get a little exercise and to see things. And I make field recordings when I do that.
Right.
And also I just love art museums. That's where modern art museums is where I get a lot of ideas for my playing and for writing.
Right.
And so I like doing that. And I think those are valuable things for me to grow as an artist, just as much as practicing. So I think I've always kind of on the road, not been a diligent practicer, more like I know I'm going to play every night. I know I'm going to improve. And that's, I guess, something, technically it's not practicing, but I do practice on stage to a degree. At least I do some analyzing of technique and trying different things, because, you know, some of these songs, I've been in the band for 19 or 20 years now. I've played hundreds and hundreds and hundreds of times. So I do things now like, you know what, I'm going to play the verses on this song with an open fulcrum now and concentrate on, you know, squeezing with these back fingers. And then, the next one, I'm going to see how does it sound different and feel different if I squeeze, you know, if my fulcrum's more forward on my grip, or just motions and timing, keeping timing with motions. There's so many little subtleties, you know, an angle, you know, on a cymbal, ride cymbal with the stick here to here. It's totally different sound, and playing positions on sounds and, you know, on cymbals and drums. There are so many different things like, what if I, even with foot technique, you know, beater in, the beater off, bouncing my heel, like all sorts of different techniques. So those are, for me, fun to do while I'm still being, you know, in the moment, communicating with everyone. If it's something I know I'm just going to be, I can play, you know, in my sleep, sometimes I will hone in on a little detail of technique like that. And to me, that's a kind of a form of practicing.
Sure. Yeah, that's fascinating. Which, you know,
happening in real time in front of an audience.
Right. Yeah, I've never thought of that, or I guess I've never had the luxury of having, you know, either played a show or certain pieces for so long that, you know, that I'm not still in like hyper, you know, focus mode of, you know, because I, you know, but I love the idea of that you know, can let your mind go to that place. It's sort of it's a self-awareness level that I guess I've never experienced. I'm sure on that level in live performing that kind of fascinates me. Is there part of that is in any way premeditated? Not that you're like, hey, on this tune, you know what, I've been kind of chewing on this, and I think, you know, I really feel like I'm going to kind of go with this symbol versus this symbol, or is it really sort of intuitive in the moment of like, just like feeling the room, feeling the space, feeling the audience, feeling the band, and like, you know, I'm going to try this for the next 30 seconds or something.
Mm-hmm. It's in the moment.
Yeah.
It's not premeditated, other than sometimes I will be like, okay, tonight on this song, I'm not going to play any of the fills the same way. Right. Because when you play a song that many times, you kind of learn which fills work, the best, which ones make the most sense musically, which ones set up the next section the best. And it's, you get into patterns because things work because you have tried all sorts of different things. But sometimes, I will premeditate that I'm going to play everything different on this song as far as like fills or things like that. But mostly it's in real time because, I've had this discussion with other touring drummers before about staying in the moment.
Right.
I've had well-known drummers ask like, how do you like not just think about like your laundry or who you have to call or all that while you're on stage, because it is, it's a weird experience that sometimes if if there's a song or if we get together on tour, we don't rehearse really.
Right.
So it's been a few months since we've played something and we get on stage. Oftentimes if we think about, I've had this discussion with my bandmates. If you think about like, wait, what do I do next?
Right.
You're going to make a mistake.
Right.
If you don't, and just keep your head out of it and let your arms and
right.
you'll play the tune perfectly because your body knows what to do. So with that, you can let your mind wander about other things, but I'm very good about that. And to me, it's just important not to do that. People pay money to go see us and they are in the moment, and it's just cheating the music and cheating the experience. And the whole, joy of performing is that communication with the audience. And so I always want to stay present with that. So I when I do these things, these little, experiments on stage, it's always to try and like benefit the music, benefit the players on stage, and to try and make the experience more heightened, more than just like, okay, I'm bored, I'm going to check something out. This, it's much more about trying to get to a higher level while we're performing.
Yeah, I guess in that way too. Yeah, I can see it as an even deeper level of engagement. That one of the things that fascinates me is the audience performer relationship, and you obviously experience that in many different ways, and probably have a better understanding of that than a lot of people. What it feels like when you're playing for an audience with Wilco versus what it feels like if you're doing a solo set versus what it feels like if you're full on composer mode and maybe you're sitting in the audience and people are playing your music and you're sort of, they're almost in both places at one time. But it is fascinating to hear about and to know about what's going through the musician's head. And I can see that level of curiosity and creativity in the moment as, like you said, an even higher level or deeper level of engagement with the music. You're opening up these different maybe doorways that haven't previously been open in terms of sound and concept and all of that stuff, which, just side note, I think is fascinating.
I guess it's a little off topic, but yeah, well, if I'm reading, when I do other things, and if I've got, a stand full of music in front of me and I'm reading, I'm not thinking about those sort of things. Or when I'm doing a solo show, it's always thinking 3 steps ahead. What do I have to do to make this transition in this? And if, it's more about, each performance situation offers its own, unique circumstances of how much concentration and how much thought you can put into things like this, or staying fully present in the moment. Right. Like I said, it's not quite practicing, but yeah.
Sure. Let's that's a nice segue into let's talk about some of your solo work, and at least in terms of how it connects with this idea of practice. So let's say, whatever your next long break is from touring with Wilco, you have a handful of solo shows coming up. What does your preparation look like for that? What's the lead time? We had you here in Waco, I don't know if it was 5-6 years ago at some point, but we split a show with the Baylor percussion group. So you played half a set, you played your solo material. What does that take to construct that? Is it something that's pretty much always dialed in and like, oh, I'm good to go? What's the building process or rebuilding process?
Well, can I go off on a tangent?
Please.
Because you said the word preparation.
Right.
And so I've always I was thinking back, last year I lived in Finland. My wife got a Fulbright
Right.
and to do research in Finland. So the band gave me a year off. We moved to Finland with the kids, and Sonar was kind enough to deliver a kit to the house where we were staying. And I had practiced. I was like, wow, I can practice, because I subbed out everything or canceled everything for, 9 months. And I was like, I don't have anything to prepare.
Right.
I was like, oh, wait, prepare. So I'm just going to play. And I was like, I guess it's all practice, right? But the difference between free play and preparation, and then it made me think back. It's like, okay, when I was a kid, I've always identified myself as a drummer since I was a little guy. But
Right.
when I started taking lessons, I guess, at age 10 or something like that, I would practice, a few hours every day after
Right.
school. When I would come home from school throughout junior high, I would be behind the drum set for hours. How much of that was what my teacher wanted me to do? Ooh, hardly any. So
Right.
I was like, it was mostly free play, and I would barely scrape by to satisfy my teachers. Unless it was solo contest. I guess I have the competitive side of me.
Right.
The approach to solo contest every year, I would practice a ton and make
Right.
sure, any rudiment that they would ask me, open, close, open, I had it dialed in, because I just didn't want to look like a fool when,
Right.
if the judge asks me to do a flam accent number two this way, or,
Right. Right.
and so that I would practice. But then I think, as I got a little bit older, in high school, super competitive marching program, in Cavaliers, and in college, it was preparation. Like I was being handed, I had a lot of literature to get through. So it was working up pieces, always working on pieces and literature, getting that up, whether it was for ensembles or solo stuff, things I was doing in lessons, and it was almost all preparation. And then when I graduated college, I was doing almost exclusively, playing with singer-songwriters, but and teaching a lot, but also doing a lot of free improv. So for
Right.
that, it was almost all free play. I remember going
Right.
into my basement or the closet before we had a house, and spending hours or the better part of a day just messing with contact mics and working on extended techniques and how to get different sounds out of the drums, and just exploration. It was
Right.
just discovery and exploration, and that's kind of what practice is to me. It's an opportunity for discovery.
Right.
That's how I view it. And then the last 10 years or so, it was all preparation, because I was collaborating with, you know, Eighth Blackbird or Kronos or So Percussion or Third Coast or all the National Sawdust projects, or, a lot of different groups, and there was a lot of music, and I was always kind of preparing, like, what's next? And anytime that I was in a practice room, it was preparation. When I got to Finland, I didn't have that, and I was like, I get to free play again.
Right.
And I even played a game with myself, like, what happens if I never play with another musician again, never record? What if no one ever hears me play drums again? Would I still play drums? It's like,
Right.
absolutely.
Yeah. Yeah.
Get off on the physical aspect of it. I love waking up and being able to play, unlock something within my body that I couldn't do the day before. To me, that's such an amazing feeling that I
Right.
guess I'm kind of addicted to that physical coordination growth. You
Right.
know what I mean? It's just something I really enjoy. So I would always do that. And I just thought, like, what would I play? And I'm not going to work on time or chops or any sort of preparation thing. I'm just going to free play. And that's what I did my whole time in Finland. And it was great, because
Right.
it got me back into that aspect of practice instead of just the preparation. And so now when I'm off tour, and well, this is taking me a while to get to your question.
It's all right.
I kind of kept that, and I realized, okay, the time I really have to practice guilt-free is in the morning, and I'm kind of a morning person anyway. I can't stay up late and practice. My mind's spent. I can. It'll take me twice as long to accomplish what I could, in the morning. So typically, what I do when I'm off tour, I wake up at 5 or 5:30. I go out back. Attached to my garage is my rehearsal space. And I practice for an hour, and then I
Oh,
come inside and wake the kids up, get ready for school, lunches and breakfast, the whole routine.
right.
And I found that focus, when everyone's still asleep, I have no responsibilities, no expectations. I can really focus well in the morning, and something about just being fresh minded. I make sure I don't check email before it, or look at the calendar to see what's coming up that day. I just wake up with nothing on my mind except I get to play now.
Right.
And whether it's productive or not, I feel a sense of accomplishment when I leave that hour, even if it's just like, oh, I got to set these things up more the way I wanted to. Or a lot of times I'll get a lot done, and whether it's preparation or working on something a little bit or free playing a little bit, I try and balance it. That's basically how I practice when I'm off the road. And then,
Right.
yeah, I have a solo show. You know, I did the Chicago Drum Show in May, something like that coming up. Then I'll, you know, go out there for most of a day and just prepare and work on things and tweak things and video myself. And, oh, that sounds cool. That doesn't quite sound cool. And, you know, make recordings and kind of hone in and you know, compose a good set and really prepare.
Right.
And that's something like when I went to, you know, to play with you guys, yeah, it's working. That stuff isn't always at my fingertips. I realize that, you know, the more you do a piece and the more you shelve it and come back to it, the quicker it comes back every time and kind of the better you are at it.
Right.
But I'm always also preparing for what can go wrong and coming up with contingencies in my head, like, oh, what if the fruit basket falls to the ground? Or what if my looping pedal goes out? What am I going to do? And so I have backups, and I kind of always have a plan, if a worst case scenario plan, because I feel like that frees me up when I'm performing, then to not have to worry about like, you know, I know I can cover it. I've
Right.
worked on the contingencies, but yeah.
It sounds like in the ways that you describe that there's, if we're again kind of talking specifically about maybe a solo set that you would do, or you know, your solo repertoire, that there's that over the years, over a span of time, it's still kept fairly fluid, I guess. And so if you revisit, you know, if you go, you've got a set coming up and you go in to work on, you know, I'm crafting, I'm going to do these 4 or 5 tunes of mine or whatever. That in terms of the destination, the target, is that, how rigid is that, I guess, or how much are you allowing new things to potentially come in? So how open are you to, like, you know what, I just feel differently about this part of this
Yeah.
piece that 3 years ago I played, you know, in this way, and now no, you know. And how do you balance that with maybe audience expectation? Because, you know, obviously there are certainly pieces of yours that, and this may get into going back to some Wilco stuff, where, you know, a listener sort of has an expectation, maybe a favorite fill, a favorite moment in a solo work that they're just waiting for you to play.
Right.
Are you bound by that in some way, or do you think, you know what, no, this is always evolving?
No, I'm not bound by it.
Yeah.
And I think it's probably more the expectation and the part of the listener might be for, you know, a vocal melody or a vocal phrasing or delivery. You know, we've all seen, you know, songs that we know so well be performed live, and the singer kind of rushes that line or does that, or, you know, and it's kind of like, oh no, I want, you know,
Yeah.
it's a bit of a letdown because you're used to hearing it a certain way. I don't think that those expectations exist with drum fills for me.
Right. Right.
Or with my solo pieces, like, oh, you didn't do that part this time or this. Pretty sure no one's ever thought that at a solo.
Right. Right.
I do allow the pieces to you know, continue growing, but like some of them, you know, they just, I know it's already like a projections of what might or something like that. It's kind of like, okay, I know what, I'm going to play it the same every time because that's the way it works best. And I've tried other things, and yeah. So
Right.
it's a combination of it. Yeah.
So this too, I think, can segue into another topic that I wanted to cover. And while it doesn't necessarily fit the mold of maybe traditional practice, the act and the work of composing, yeah, even for you, you know, when you're out on tour and gathering field recordings, you had mentioned earlier, you know, when you're playing live on stage. With Wilco, some of the things that you do, that you explore in a way as a form of practice, and I would absolutely agree with that. To me, I'm not a composer, but I can see the act of composing, of course, is another form of practice. I mean, every time you compose or attempt to compose, you are practicing the act of composition, or the act of gathering recordings, or or whatever that is. You haven't carved out like, I'm going to take 15 minutes and work on my voice leading, and then I'm going to write this piece. So maybe talk a little bit about that work, which is detached from drums and percussion many times. And how do you approach that any differently? Or is it does it inhabit a similar mind space with this idea of work, practice, preparation?
I think it is a bit different. And that's something I left out earlier when I was talking about like practicing on the road. And I said, we didn't used to have the dressing room kit, so I couldn't practice that. And, if there was a drum set, maybe I would have access to it a little bit more. But then basically when we did start getting all that, and the opportunity to practice existed during the day where I could go to the dressing room and practice, that's when I started composing a lot. And it basically, because just to work on the work-life balance, which is, endless practice for any of us who have families, or in relationships. And I try and do all my, anytime I'd get a commission or a composing job, I would try and do it on the road, because I knew I had X amount of hours of downtime, and it wouldn't take away from my time at home to be present. I don't want to be present but not present.
Right.
Home. You know what I mean? Yeah. I don't want to be there, but thinking about these other pieces, I want to enjoy my time with my family. So that's almost all of my spare time. Almost the better part of 10 years was spent on the road composing, because I always had something coming up. And it's easy because I'm not the type of composer who needs to have that certain pencil at a certain desk and a certain time with, whatever, the 60 beans of coffee in the cup. And so I could do it, just open up my laptop and, 5 minutes here, 5 minutes there, on the bus after the show, in dressing rooms, wherever. That is a little, the process is a bit unique compared to practicing drums, because I've noticed, and I've had this discussion with a lot of people. It came up a bunch when I was teaching that class at University of Chicago with Stephen Rings. And, we had guests come in. Jeff Tweedy from Wilco came in. We talked about this. Ed O'Brien from Radiohead, Jad Abumrad. And the idea of doing something on a regular basis yields much greater results. So with composing, I found that for me especially, and I don't want to generalize, everyone's an individual, but pretty sure this is just the way it works, that the more you do it, the more fluent you become at it. Right. It's something that if you just sit down and do it every day, and I know this is what, happens with Jeff, our singer and songwriter in Wilco, is he goes into the studio every day, just works a little bit on something. And that's how it was with me composing. The more you do it, and just do a little bit every day, then it's just like turning on the faucet. The ideas just come. It's almost too many ideas a lot of times, not enough time to explore them all, instead of waiting for an epiphany, to come and, I'm going to write this piece, you know what I mean? So kind of that daily practice of regiment or routine with composing. Now with practicing on drums, I found that I don't need to do that. I can take, 4 weeks off if I'm not be behind a drum set at all, and then come back and, and approach it differently. It's not, and still have a lot of ideas. It's more important that I'm in the right mindset when I practice than to force it. Practicing drums. Right. Composing, I think it's more of a routine and a regularity that I need.
So, and that actually leads me. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah. And you're also somehow doing a brilliant job of setting up, like, every segue to the next question that I'm thinking of asking. Somehow I'm
just reading what you sent me.
I'm just reading the script. Yeah. Well, you mentioned, with playing drums, that you can take a healthy chunk of time off. You can say that I'm not going to do this for a while. And that actually was something that I wanted to probe a little bit of, how often do you do that, and how often do you feel you need to do that in order to stay, healthy with your relationship to, I know for me, if I'm coming out of a particularly dense period of work, like, I won't touch any instrument for a week or two afterwards, because I need to be away from it. How often do you impose some of those restrictions on yourself? After when you're done with tour and you come back, and obviously that you've already mentioned you want to be able to spend great time with your family and all of that, but is there also a decision to say, like, you know what, I'm not going to play drums for 2 weeks because I need to step away for a little bit? Or do you not need that?
No, it's never self-imposed. If it were up to me, I would go in and practice and play, be behind the drums every single day, because it's just fun to play. I mean, even if I just sit down and play beats and come up with a new beat, like 10 minutes for me, that's joy. That is joy for me. So it's never self-imposed, but it does happen a lot where I will go weeks without touching a drum set just because I have family responsibilities, or I'm out of town, or I'm doing, other things. It doesn't fit in, like, oh, I have to go pick up this, and I got to go buy crickets for the toad and get cat food and all, like there's just an endless, especially having a house and in Chicago, an endless list of things to accomplish and do. And when I'm touring, that list gets longer and longer. So when I get home, I have to make time for those things. So sometimes practice isn't the priority, and I won't get behind the drums for a few days or weeks even. But I want to still, and that's why I've found that waking up early like that solves the problems, because then I'm able to get behind the drums, I'm able to do it, and then I still have my entire day to get everything else done. So it's never self-imposed. However, I have felt that when I've been working up music, whether it's like this Reich piece or this long vibraphone passage that I have to do of Paolo Prestini's or something like that, when it's actual notes on a page and I have to practice it, I like taking breaks from that if I had an intense period. You know what I mean? I don't want to just jump right back in and put up some more music and start working on it. It's more like, I want to sit down and I want to play. Have fun and play as opposed to prepare.
Okay, so the where we're gonna wrap, and well, I mean, I've carved out my whole afternoon, so I'm fine if this is a 4-hour interview. So when I reached out to you last week or the week before or whenever, it was coming off of a couple. Some friends of ours had just seen Wilco in Austin, and so our friend was texting Jessica and I and talking about the show, and it was so great. It made particular mention of how stellar the drumming was on the show, and I'm not just saying that to butter you up. She's really, really taken by.
Well, you can say that just for future reference. Okay, feel free.
Okay.
You know how it goes. The better we get, and the more we know, the more we realize, we really suck. So it's actually good to get positive reinforcement. The more you learn, the more you realize how much you have to learn.
Right. So anyway, Jessica and I were just, talking about you and reminiscing when you were here in Waco, and Jessica really enjoyed hanging out with you that night. So she threw a question into the mix, which has nothing to do with practice, but has to do with just real life and living and family and kids. So it's not a serious question. You may not have an answer for it. You may, I don't know. But let's say it's an evening where you guys don't want to cook, and you're required to provide food for the family, and you got to pick something up from a restaurant. What's your go-to? Where do you go? What satisfies everyone, takes care of everybody's hunger needs, makes everybody happy, and it's just you have this nice special family food night.
For takeout, well, we don't have a ton of options because I live in a part of Chicago where it's like there's not a lot of restaurants right in my neighborhood.
Okay.
I live very close to the Wilco loft, like just a little over a quarter mile. If I were at the Wilco loft, we have all sorts of options. I guess now we do, because now there's like Uber Eats and all those other delivery services. But it's Thai or sushi, and that'll satisfy the kids and us. But basically, it's going to be Thai food or sushi.
Okay.
Yeah. Or if it's a pinch, like babysitters coming and that sort of thing. Pizza, of course.
Okay. Yeah.
Not
Standard.
Chicago style pizza. Yeah, thin crust.
Okay. Yeah. That's great. And now, so, okay, what if, then one little addendum. What if then you are, is it the same if you're going out? If you're saying, everybody get in the car, we're going somewhere. Does it change? Is it still Thai or sushi? Or is there like,
no. It's probably
it's
something different. Yeah.
Okay.
Because then there's spots that we like that don't deliver,
Right.
Yeah, restaurants, or there's always new places popping up all the time. So we'll try new places. Who are you talking to?
My colleague, you know Chris Size. Do you know Chris Size?
Yeah.
So he's been teaching here the past 2
I
or 3
didn't know
years.
that.
Yeah.
That's what he's doing in Texas.
Yeah.
Oh.
He's here.
Okay.
He's in the office. Well, he just left, but
with him last week.
He said to say hey.
Nice record. He had a record drop last week.
I know, right? Have you listened to it?
Yeah.
It's beautiful. Yeah.
Yeah.
Of course you have. Right?
Congratulations.
I'll pass along the very good vibes from you.
What about you? What's your go-to takeout?
For food?
Yeah.
Oh gosh. See, we have really, our kids are extraordinarily picky eaters, and not in a good way. Not that they have like a really refined palate or anything, just like they literally won't eat lots of stuff, or at least our younger child. We really takeout. We don't tend to do all that much, just because we have places around us, but there's not something that satisfies everybody. We will, if schedules are normal, we will do a Friday evening Tex-Mex dinner out. That's kind of our routine. So weather is good, sitting on the patio, margaritas, chips, that everybody's happy with that, right? Yeah. We have this fantastic new barbecue place that actually just opened like one street over from us. So I'm going to try to impose that on the family. It's like sort of the new thing, because it's easy and it's great.
It is what I forgot. Actually, there's a great taco place that opened by us last year, Chicago Taco Authority, CTA. Okay. We do get that quite a bit.
Okay. And everybody's good with that.
Everyone's good with that.
Yeah. Kids, it's hard because you got to, my kids, we don't have great Thai or sushi in Waco, as you may or may not have guessed. So,
it's hard to know, man. I'm in Indianapolis, the capital of shrimp cocktail. Who would have thought?
Right. Yeah. But your ability to expose your children to certain things, not just food, right? But museums and cultural things, and whatever, national parks. It's somewhat dependent on geographically where you are. So, okay. Then final question. When you guys were in Finland, did you form an affinity for Finnish food, or I'm assuming everything was available, like a lot of different things, and
but it was a lot of because just the way instead of stocking up a fridge, go to the market every day or every other day, get fresh bread. Where we were located, I had to walk through a birch forest to get to our grocery. We didn't have a car. It was pretty idyllic. It was great. With the fresh fish there, incredible. Right. A lot of great just produce in general. For me, the thing that I kind of loved the most about food in Finland was the seasonality of certain, especially pastries, which you don't see a lot of seasonality anymore. You know what I mean? When we were kids, you wouldn't get, you wouldn't get certain fruits and vegetables year round.
Right.
It was, when they were
right.
Now you can get anything anytime you want.
Yeah.
It was nice there that, all of a sudden in every store, every grocery, bakery, you'd see this one type of pastry that would be around for 4 weeks and then gone.
Right.
It was just because this one holiday, just for May Day, or just for Midsummer's, or just for New Year's, they'd have a certain type of a seasonal dish. And I thought that was really cool. Because it's like, you enjoy it, and then you wait for it till next year. And it's nice to wait for things and not always have access to everything. I think that's
right.
But also I did try, just because we're little adventurous, we had a lot of, I ate moose and reindeer and
Right.
You know,
And that's the thing. That's normal.
that's normal. Yeah. We even had bear at one point.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Just a whale recently in Norway.
Okay.
Yeah.
And that was.
Maybe edit that part out. No, oh, it's one for my son actually, because my daughter's more of the adventurous eater. You know, she's all about like, you know, we had friends over last week when I was home, and we did get sushi, and
Right.
she was, hey, can I have that fish egg? And I was like, oh, I love her. She's great. An
Right.
11-year-old, she's coming up and eating, you know, eating fish eggs. And it's like,
Right.
oh, I love that.
Right.
My son's a little more conservative with that, but in Finland, he did eat deep fried crickets.
Okay.
Because that was a thing at, you know, one place we were at. Instead of peanuts, you know, it was a restaurant brewery, and they had deep fried crickets, and he ate those. So I was like, right on, man.
And he liked it, or liked it enough.
I don't know if he would do it again and again, but he can like gag.
Right. Yeah. That's great. I love hearing it. I mean, that's just, you know, that stuff is, you know, when you have a family, is, you know, that occupies, I mean, it seems silly on some level, but it occupies like a lot of your bandwidth of just, you know, like,
Yeah.
you know, what are we gonna eat tonight, and what's the experience going to be like when we gather to eat, and you know that. So.
Oh, just knowing, yeah, because we are, you know, don't give our kids a lot of options, and so just knowing, like, as you're bringing something out of the kitchen to the table, that oh, how long is the fight going to be tonight, or
Right.
how, you know, like, how much resistance is there going to be? Is this going to, you know, is someone going to have to walk away from the table for a little
Right.
while?
Right.
Like, yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Glenn, thank you. I've really derailed the interview here at the end of it. So.
Well, I mean, I assume you're going to be doing some editing, but is there any practice stuff we didn't talk about?
No, I think all of it is really great, and it captured all of like the big picture things that I was really curious to ask you about.
Yeah, I'm going to add one thing, because I was just thinking, like, you know, when I was teaching full time, when I joined Wilco, I was teaching 50 kids a week.
Right.
And I don't get to teach much anymore.
Right.
You know, just a handful of lessons a year. But when I practice and I'm actually learning something, I do what I always told students to do, and that's like small chunks,
right,
slow,
right,
repetition over and over. You know, learn a little bit, get it good, add on to it. You know, especially when it comes to coordination and drum set stuff.
Right.
And you know, so it seems so basic and obvious, but it is true. Just take something slow and really process what's happening, because when you try to take things too fast, you're just going to make the same mistakes over and over and over.
Right.
And you really have to, like, especially with coordination things, lock them in and teach your muscles and train your muscles. And the best way to do that is slow, small bits and pieces. But
yeah, and really, I mean, it's so true. Like, and whether we're talking about rudimental drumming or, like, you know, Xenakis, it still works. You know, it's like, that doesn't change. So,
right.
You know, blueprint over the whole thing. Okay, well, on that incredible nugget, now we will close up shop.
Okay.
So, Glenn, thank you, really, from the bottom of my heart, for taking time out. I appreciate you doing this, and I'm sorry that I won't see you in Indianapolis, but
no, any chance I get to talk to you, I take it. So
okay, well, I'm going to hold you to that. So I'm going to start calling you now every week.
Great.
Hey, do you just want to talk, Glenn?
Hey, man, let's wrap. Yeah, and I'm bummed I'm going to miss the conference this year, but I did my time at the Rhythm Discovery Center yesterday.
That's
that
great.
Was nice.
That's
so
great.
Yeah.
Cool.
Yeah.
It's great. So yeah, until next time, whenever that is, hopefully we bump into each other in person somewhere. And I'm making the pledge. Next time Wilco is close, Jessica and I are going to come.
Please.
So, yeah.
Please. Yeah.